Welcome to this knowledge development introduction of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This video will offer you some starting tips to support you to teach this text in your own classroom. We encourage you to use the pause points in the video, indicated by the symbol you can see at the top of the screen, to engage with your subject knowledge and consider the steps you want and need to take for your own development. My name is Gemma Taylor and I am an English subject development lead, and I'll be talking you through this 19th century novella, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The National Association of School-Based Teacher Trainers identify 5 key areas that we can use to develop our subject knowledge throughout our training and beyond. These short videos are designed to support you with 2 of these areas to help you get started and prepared for the topics and texts you will be teaching in your English classroom. Prior knowledge is an important place to start, so this video focuses on the text Jekyll and Hyde. Where has this come up for you in your own education? Remember, if I studied this at university or GCSE, it doesn't necessarily mean I have all the knowledge I need as a pedagogue to teach that today, so I want to consider what my gaps might be. Secondly, we'll share with you some useful places to start when it comes to addressing those gaps in the form of your own reading and research. So as part of your preparation course before starting Institute, you'll have been guided towards the GCSE English Literature content, where you will find this 19th century text sitting as one of the options for schools to teach. A reminder of the actions from this course are on the right hand side of the screen now, and it might be useful to pause here and reflect on your progress from your preparation course and the actions you might need to take moving forward with this text focus in mind. It can be useful, for example, to go back and look at the past papers and the Jekyll and Hyde questions, even have a go at some of these questions yourself perhaps, and have a look at the mark schemes to see how you did. The aim of these subject knowledge videos are to support you to think about your starting points and directions that you can take to be smart with your time in preparing to teach these texts and topics. By the end of the video, you should have a clear idea of what your gaps are and the next steps you will take to address these. So with this text, we want to draw your attention to a content warning that you can see on the screen here, and in particular towards the ableist language in this text. So ableist language refers to discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities. In this novella, Mr. Hyde is described in terms that suggest physical deformity and moral corruption. Deformed and displeasing are 2 of the words used in this text, which imply that physical difference are inherently linked to evil and moral deficiencies. These reflect the ableist attitudes of the 19th century, where physical and mental difference are stigmatized. So let's get started. Really important, our starting point is with prior knowledge. So what current knowledge do you have of this novella? Notice, for example, I'm calling this a novella as it is considered as a short novel. Pause here for 1 minute to jot down what you currently know of this text. Now consider where you drew your learning from. Was it GCSE, your own reading, part of your degree, somewhere else? The importance here is recognising where your gaps are and using this video and the next steps you outline from this guide that will help you develop your subject knowledge as a pedagogue for this text. So we take a starter knowledge card approach to supporting you with your initial subject knowledge, and this is a pyramid approach to getting a handle on the topics and texts you're teaching. So bottom of the pyramid and foundational knowledge covers getting to know the text, understanding the reading, the topics, the plot, the characters, the genre. Secondly, we can move to thinking about thematic and contextual factors relevant to the text. Then we can move into recommended reading and resources that might be useful for you. And as you develop through the programme, you'll find also pedagogical approaches that are useful for teaching this text. We call this reading as a pedagogue. And finally, we suggest some questions that address some of the challenging and/or core aspects of the text that you might delve into further with your mentor, your own reading and research, or discussions that you might have with your subject development lead. And they will encourage you to address misconceptions and areas that encourage you to embed as part of your teaching of the text. So let's start with the foundational knowledge. Whether you've read this novella or not, it is worth rereading it. Start with a focus on understanding the world of the text. That includes the plot, the events, the characters, and the perspectives. We also want to read Jekyll and Hyde as an English teacher, and that means we need to read as a pedagogue. That is with a view to teaching the text to pupils. So we can borrow some of Andrew Atherton's approaches for this, which you might have seen before, and they are on the right-hand side of the screen. And I do suggest pausing the video here and having a look at those 3 suggestions. You'll notice we can also consider the content warnings of the text as part of our subject knowledge here. As I mentioned before, violence, death and murder are throughout this novella and linked to the conventions of the Gothic, but also reflect the real fears of the time. Again, to touch on ableist language here too, it can be worth developing a clear understanding of the ableist language used around Mr. Hyde as a character and descriptions of his physical appearance and loss of control, leading to comparisons being drawn between evil and moral deficiency and physical differences or mental health issues. Other areas we might want to ensure we feel confident in include genre, structure and key themes. So the Gothic genre is a popular option for teaching throughout secondary English classrooms in both Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. It can really help to build your understanding around the conventions of this genre in particular and where those conventions appear in The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And the structure of this novella is an interesting one, and it does impact the way the story is told and the impact on the reader. The title reveals quite a pragmatic and criminal justice presentation of the story, as it's called The Strange Case of, and that might lend its credibility and emulated in the first-person accounts used throughout the story from all men who are seemingly well respected and have respected jobs in society, lawyers and doctors, for example. And then we get the confessional chapter at the end. Therefore, it's an interesting structural point that's worth investigating and its intention for the reader. It can be worth considering your own reaction when you read chapter 10 and if your view of Jekyll changes in light of this structural shift. Key themes also provide some bridging thinking as we move into thematic and contextual subject knowledge development. So to finish here, it can be worth considering in your reading how binary opposites are set up in the novella as well, and the purpose and intent of those. And they might link to some of the dots or the asterisk marks that you placed in the novella when you were reading it yourself. Okay, so do pause here to identify your next steps against the gaps that you noted down in the video. So the next section that we'll have a look at is thematic and contextual knowledge. As I'm sure you've already heard several times in these videos, but we are first and foremost English teachers, not history teachers. So pupils don't need to know everything about the context of the 19th century for you to be able to teach Jekyll and Hyde well. And we really want to let the text, the story, drive the relevant contextual knowledge that we do teach the pupils. For example, it is relevant that the introduction of Darwin's Evolution of Man caused contention between science and religion at the time. And we see that impact both Jekyll and Lanyon in the story, who are both doctors who take very different approaches to their profession. Other contextually relevant factors that impact the story include the social hierarchy of the time and the view of what it was to be an upper-class gentleman. It was really being shaken by the reality of the dual lives some were living. And there's a notorious example of this being the belief that Jack the Ripper was an upper-class man. And we see this in the secret and dual nature of human beings as a theme that drives all of Jekyll's actions and the coming to life of Hyde within him. Reputation amongst this very male-dominated telling of the story is also relevant. Utterson is a lawyer and his friends are both doctors. So they all have a standing in the community, and it's through the eyes of these characters' first-person accounts that the story is told. The violence and subsequent crimes that surround this group of respectable men is shrouded in secrets and lies, another key theme of the story. Hopefully you can see here from the 6 images on the screen, we've gone through how we want to keep the context quite closely linked to the text and characters, allowing the text to tell the story. And there are some other areas that we can consider within thematic and contextual knowledge, and that's motifs and symbols. So Stevenson's use of windows and doors are useful as you read the text to consider how he conveys the themes we've just discussed. Hyde's detailed description of his door being a starting point, but we come back to doors and windows all the way through the novel. When Jekyll hides in the window, the maid's view of the murder from the window, and the breaking down of the door to get to Jekyll at the end of the story. And that idea of concealment is also relevant in the motif of the fog, which occurs most often when Hyde is around. The last thing you'll notice on the screen here is the list of names, and you might have noted that I've mentioned a few already when it comes to the linking relevant contextual knowledge, but all have links to the themes that appear in the novel. Burke and Hare, being notorious murderers and grave robbers, providing cadavers for anatomical study to doctors like John Hunter, who famously had 2 entrances to his home-come workspace that do echo that of Jekyll's home in the story, 1 entrance for Jekyll and 1 entrance for Hyde. And if you are particularly interested, you might also explore Sigmund Freud's work of the id, ego and superego that was another new area of science alongside the theory of evolution. And the id and superego perhaps a mirror of Jekyll and Hyde as characters in the story. So I invite you to pause here again to identify areas of thematic and contextual knowledge that you need to investigate further to support your subject knowledge. Okay, so we've talked about starting knowledge and thematic and contextual factors for Jekyll and Hyde, but where can you go to now develop this knowledge? Remember that the pedagogy side of this will develop as the year goes on. For now, we're looking specifically at research and reading that supports your understanding of the novella and how to read this as a pedagogue. Here are some starting recommendations. The first image on the left is from one of the courses on Masalit. Now you'll find 3 courses from university lecturers on this text. Each one has a list of short videos and some have quizzes, and there are transcripts to go with each video as you can see on the screen. You can see 2 texts we highly recommend for teaching literature. These are both useful for teaching 19th century texts common to the GCSE literature, of which Jekyll and Hyde is one. So we have Jennifer Webb's How to Teach English Literature, and she has chapters in there on context and authorial intent and prose in her book. A second useful text on there is Andrew Atherton's Experience in English Literature, and he has a chapter there, chapter 2, that is useful called Responding to Novels. The final image you can see on the screen here is the Educational Recording Agency. Now most schools have a license to this, and all you need to do once you've got it is enter your school email address to get access. And you can find licensed content that might not be available year round in places like the BBC iPlayer. A useful piece on there that is relevant to this text, Jekyll and Hyde, is a documentary by Ian Rankin on this text that is very useful also alongside some radio play versions of the text to listen to as well. As we have just talked about Masalit, here is the reminder again of the website and your login details so that you can access Masalit for yourself. Oak National Academy have some useful resources that can support you to think about The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, this text looking at it as a pedagogue. And for this text you'll notice that there are several resources on there that include GCSE content from 3 exam boards, AQA, Pearson and EdExcel, along with slide decks, lesson details, lesson videos, worksheets and quizzes. And I invite you to have a look at some of these and look at some of the misconceptions that come up in the lesson details, and perhaps go through the lessons as if you were a pupil. That might help you develop some of the content that is taught with Jekyll and Hyde. Even if you don't know your exam board yet, it's useful to look at the lesson slide examples, and as I said, have a go as a pupil as well to review your own developing knowledge of the text. And you might make note of the key terms, key plot points or misconceptions that do come up. So the final area to consider in this video are questions. So when we think about questions, we want to phrase this as how will I, as in how will I as the teacher, so that you can begin to build your own question bank that will help you address misconceptions and plan carefully when teaching Jekyll and Hyde. These can be questions you write down as you are reading and researching, and you might find you add to these and discuss them with your mentor over the course of you teaching this text. The important thing here is that you help develop your pedagogical reasoning, and these questions will help you teach Jekyll and Hyde with intent. So let's go through a few examples. So my 3 examples are: how will I facilitate discussions on the perspectives and voices that are marginalised or absent in the story? How will I facilitate discussions around identity and transformation? How will I create space to investigate the impact of scientific changes of the time on society and compare with today? So I invite you to pause here again to make a list of your own questions, or perhaps a start of a list, and create some space so that you can add to this as you continue to develop your subject knowledge. So what we've covered today supports the actions you can now take to develop your ongoing subject knowledge of the text, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If this is a text you are teaching, you may find that you will add it to your year-long subject knowledge reflection document. This is an essential place throughout your training to show your ongoing development as an English teacher. This will be a working document that you will be adding to and sharing with your subject development lead throughout the year to support your QTS and beyond. And you will have started to complete the first section as part of your Institute subject development goal and in your check-ins with your SDL. You can find more information about your subject knowledge reflection document in your Brightspace content from Institute, along with the SKR document template for you to download and save. And you can see here an overview of the table and some of the questions that we've covered today and where they align with this document. Pause here and use the questions to support you to complete and update your SKR for your Jekyll and Hyde target. Don't forget to share with your SDL once you've updated it. Well done, and thank you for engaging with this short video to help you get started on your subject knowledge for Jekyll and Hyde. You will find everything we've discussed on this subject knowledge starter card that includes a list of links and example questions. Remember, it is our responsibility to know the topic and text we're teaching. Even if we're given centralised lesson resources and plans, this doesn't replace developing your own subject knowledge. Better subject knowledge means better pedagogical decisions in our classroom that will support learning for your pupils. Final thing to say is enjoy the journey. As we say before, there's always something new to discover in all the texts that we're teaching, even if we're going back and rereading texts that we have not read in a long time. That's what makes English such a wonderful subject to teach. So if you have any questions about this text and your subject knowledge, you have 2 wonderful people that you can go to and speak to, your subject development lead and also your in-school mentor. So do reach out to them.